So, today we are going to talk about civility and respect in the workplace. There has been a troubling trend towards incivility, and it pops up socially and like outside and everyday life, but it's popping up at work too. And it doesn't matter if you're left or right, there's incivility going both directions. So, what do we do about this? Coming up now. And here we are on the HR Hub podcast with me, Andrea Adams. Keep listening to learn about this or anything else related to HR. You can also find me on YouTube. Today, I'm excited to have Sara Taylor on the show. Sara is the president and founder of deepSEE Consulting. She has specialties in both diversity and leadership development. Sara has become a thought leader in the area of cultural competence and recently published a book called Thinking at the Speed of Bias. I'm really interested in that, but we're not going to talk about it too much. She's been a chief diversity officer. Was a guest, I guess by the time this comes out, she was a guest on my panel. Hi, Sara, how are you?
I am fabulous and so thankful to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, I am so thankful to have you on the show. I'm excited about this topic because I'm Canadian, but some of the general trends in civility and just general meanness on the internet that somehow seeps its way into everyday life has been concerning. But today we're going to talk mostly about civility in the workplace. So let's get us off. Can you tell us what civility is and give examples of incivility?
Yeah, absolutely. And, yes, we are talking about the workplace, but really all of this applies in our communities and in our day-to-day interactions as well. Now, most folks think about civility as like a switch. It's on or it's off. And I hear and see articles about, oh, we've lost civility, we have civility, as if it's just you have it or you don't.
Yeah.
It's there or it's not. In actuality, civility is something that is developmental. It really comes from our ability to interact effectively with folks that are different from us, which actually is everybody. So it is something that we see that any of us can develop, and any of us can be more effective, more civil.
Mm-hmm. It's a development thing, and we can develop civility. What does civility in action look like?
Yeah, absolutely. I relate it to the stages of cultural competence. And now most folks think, well, wait a second, how does cultural competence relate? When we talk about cultural competence, we're not talking about, do I kiss, bow, or shake hands? Something that I travel abroad, right?
Yeah.
Cultural competence is actually about how do I interact with people that are different from me, which frankly is everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And what we know is that there are actually stages of developing mindsets and skill sets. And earlier mindsets are really kind of oblivious to the impact that their actions have on others. So 5 stages of development. So from early stages where we're really kind of oblivious to the second stage where we're outwardly judging and outwardly okay with being offensive. Then the next stage where we want to pretend everything is okay.
Oh.
And when we do that, we think so many of us, in fact, that's where almost all of us are stuck. Almost 70% of us in that stage. And we do that because we think, well, we're really not going to talk about how we're different, not going to talk about anything, that is divisive, and then we're going to be okay, right?
Yeah.
Well, the reality is I bring very unique differences like everyone else. And so if we're not able to talk about those, we can still be offensive in that stage. And the latter two stages, we're actually able to see much greater complexity in both how I perceive the interactions that I'm in, as well as how others perceive them in order to be most effective. And so we're able to shift from on that the earlier stages, the first three stages, lots of folks talk about the golden rule.
Mm-hmm.
We know what that is. Do unto others as we would have them do unto us.
Mm-hmm.
But instead, we're actually focusing in those latter stages, do unto others as they would have done to them. That's the platinum rule.
Mm-hmm.
And so to move to that, we have to actually develop an ability. And that's why it's not just I am civil or I'm not. I am respectful or I'm not.
So at the first level of this developmental cycle, we're oblivious. We just say what comes to mind.
And oblivious to how others might be impacted.
Okay.
Oblivious even to very easy to see differences. Not too many people are there, though.
Okay.
Usually, less than 2% of a population are in that stage.
So then we go to the next stage, stage 2, which I think is, for HR professionals, is going to be the stage that concerns them most. This is where we are going to have problems. So stage 2 is where people deliberately say offensive things.
Yeah, that's the key. And let me, I wasn't intending to go back, but when you said deliberately, because folks in the first stage can say something that's offensive, but they'll be clueless to the fact that it is.
Okay.
Just really oblivious. So when someone comes to HR because they've said something, offensive, and you kind of go through, in the meeting, you said this, and they're like, wait, what?
I have an example of that. I did an investigation a while back, and this fellow was saying absolutely hideous things about sexual acts with women and animals, and it was terrible. He had no clue that he wasn't supposed to be saying these things. None. So he's clearly one of the 2%.
Yes. And you're lucky to be doing an investigation with him. Yeah. So that first stage is oblivious, and that's why I call that oblivious. The second stage, we're judgmental. Us, them, good, bad. It's okay to say all of X group are smart, all of Y group are lazy. This group is better. If you deny that, you're just being dishonest. There is a sense of this is what's right. And if you're not seeing that, I'm just going to say it louder until you see it and until you understand it. Very judgmental, but also really, really lacking an understanding of complexity. So I'm always big on visuals. So I think about, if you had pointillism painting, so pointillism painting has what? A gajillion different dots in it, right? That make up that whole painting. If you took away all but 4 dots, you'd have absolutely no idea what that painting was. That's kind of the way folks in this stage are operating, because they just don't see the complexity, yet they're very sure in their opinion, very clear about their judgment and the evaluations that their brain is making about other folks. That's why they're loudly stating their claim.
Now, I know that I think what would be likely is so many of the people who's watching this are thinking, I know a person like that. Probably, 99% of the people that went and stormed the White House, when was that? I don't know what year that was, but they would be in that category, or that's what we're thinking of those people in the category. But I'm also thinking that I've heard other people, and not even by not seeing the complexity of those people, which, they're doing illegal things. But anyways, not seeing the complexity there, am I committing the same offense?
Yeah, absolutely. We can be. Absolutely.
Okay.
And so it is an equal opportunity judgment.
Yeah.
And it is not only certain people judge. So you literally, and this is what's always, I see leaders so often, once they understand these stages of development,
Okay.
there's always this assumption, particularly when we relate it to DEI.
Yes.
There's an assumption that marginalized folks are somehow more competent. And in actuality, that's not the case. Are marginalized folks, have they experienced more oppression? Absolutely. Have they experienced more microaggressions, more disadvantage? Absolutely. But that doesn't mean that they have developed this ability to understand how their unconscious is creating their behaviors. Let's say in an organization, you've got fights going on essentially about a particular DEI issue. You can have folks on both sides of that fight that actually are in this second stage of development, regardless of their identity.
And it's maybe something I'm guilty of, is too often absolving the oppressed from any role. And which is so privileged of me to say, I might add, because I'm white. And that gets us to actually nicely segues into the second stage, because I think most of us, or the third one, is that because most of us are afraid to say anything, so we say nothing. Can you tell us about the third stage?
Yeah, so that third stage is the mindset is a focus on differences divides, a focus on similarity unites. So I'm not going to talk about the differences. I'll give you a quote from a person in a focus group in one particular organization. And she said, yeah, we get along really well on our team, despite all of our differences, because, we just don't talk about them because that'd just be too divisive. So it's this sense of, shove all of the differences under the rug. But the reality is, what happens when you shove all kinds of stuff under the rug? Eventually you trip over it. And so shoving it under the rug and pretending that it's not there doesn't make differences go away. Our differences are there, and they're always going to be there. And in fact, they're going to keep increasing in our workplace.
Ooh, ouch. That one hurts a bit. For those of us who are trying so hard to be kind, it hurts.
Well, let me just say about that, though. Every stage has something that's positive, in one sense or another. And that particular stage, this is developmental. We've moved beyond seeing other people as a threat.
Okay.
And we don't want to do this good, bad, us, them. And so what we find as a strategy is, let's pretend we're all us.
Yes.
Instead of what is the fourth stage, leaning into the differences and saying, yeah, there's incredible complexity. And it's not good or bad. It's just different.
How do you do that? How do you do that without it just seems to me that some people do get offended or upset or something, and I don't know what's going on when that happens.
Yeah. So first of all, moving to any of the stages, it is developmental. And so you can't just say, that's the stage I want to be in, that's the stage I'm going to be in. No, you have to develop. So moving from that stage where, kind of minimizing differences, what we need to do is be fully aware of our own unconscious filters and how those create our realities, how they make us different, just like they make others different. But we start with ourselves. We don't go, and this is the mistake that so many people make. They say, okay, someone new is coming to the team and their X identity. Let's learn about X identity. And so what does that do? Or even, yay, someone new to the team, you introduce yourself to us. What we're doing is we're focusing on the different, which makes us the norm. I'm the norm. I'm good. I'm professional. I'm right. You're different. And so then when there's a rub, it's easy to go to, you're the one that's disrespectful. You're the one that's unprofessional. You're the one that's wrong. Versus if I start with, I'm different. I'm not the norm. And how I see the world and how I operate is based on my unconscious filters. And so if we start there, then we're less judgmental when we look at how others are different from us.
Hey, business owners, executive directors, are people stresses or challenges getting in your way? Imagine managing your people issues smoothly, addressing, better yet, dealing with employee problems before they're ever a big problem, adapting to all the changes in employee rules, and doing all of this easily. I can deal with your HR challenges so they're resolved. With me, you'll get the right things done, build a strong team, and create a workplace where the right people want to be. Your business deserves to thrive without a lot of HR hassle. I'm here to help you make that happen. With my assistance, you can focus on business growth, supported by a strong team. Take a first step towards a better business today. Reach out and let's chat. Visit the hrhub.ca and let's begin transforming your people challenges.
So what's stage 5?
Yeah. So then into that last stage, once I really see that complexity, so it's like I see the pointillism painting for me and for you.
Yeah.
Then I can see what our true differences are. And I can see how I need to shift my behavior to be more effective in my interaction with you. So I'm able then to match my positive intent with an equally positive impact with you. That's stage 5. That's where we're able to be our most effective selves.
Okay. So if we see stuff bubbling up and it looks like second stage kind of stuff, maybe it's fights, maybe it's, I don't know, anonymous racist things, or I don't know what comes up at that stage. But if that comes up, what do we do? How do we, do we have a role in moving the organization more, up the developmental chain?
Oh, I believe we absolutely do. If not HR, who?
Right.
Honestly.
It sounds to me like an HR kind of job.
It really is. It really is. Absolutely. So I think obviously the first piece is to understand, is it something that is intentional discrimination? Is it something that merits an investigation?
Mm-hmm.
That's something separate.
Okay.
And we need to follow our processes in that regard. If it is something where, folks are making these statements broadly about maybe an election coming up, or, something that they saw in their social media feed that comes from this second stage of development, but it's still having an impact.
Yeah.
We go back to, remember that if this is developmental, we know what are the strategies to move someone from one stage to the next. Now, we in HR may not be able to actually develop someone as we're dealing with the particular situation we're dealing with, but we can at the very least work with the development in that situation and move the situation to something that's more effective, more positive. And the strategy in responding to someone who's doing the good, bad, us, them is actually to focus on commonalities.
Yeah, whatever. Okay,
Might sound similar, might sound familiar, right?
Which moves us to where there's more similarities than differences.
Exactly.
It's strategy that gets us to step 3, which is still a little cringy.
Yep. That's right.
Okay.
That's right. And again, that's why I think so many people stay in that stage. Because and it is about 70% of folks in that third stage. Mm-hmm. So we stay there because we think, well, this is what we're supposed to do to move from that where we were, right?
Yeah.
And we don't want to go back there, so we're just going to keep pretending that there aren't any differences.
Right.
So what that can look like very explicitly for a specific situation is statements that start with, I think we all want
Mm-hmm.
what's best in this situation. I think we all want a respectful workplace. I think we all want an effective meeting. I think we all want what's best for this project. So starting with that, you know what? We all have a positive intent here.
Yes.
And then another, I'm going to give a couple of different strategies here.
Okay.
We all do want what's best. And then kind of pointing out some of the differences. And, you said something about gender and made some comments about gender. And you've got folks that are on your team that don't share the same gender as you. And here's the magic. I think it's 5 words. Let me count them out as I say them. Can you consider the possibility? Can you consider the possibility that the statement that you made might land a lot differently for someone that is a different gender?
Mm-hmm.
Can you consider the possibility that the folks on your team might have been offended by that statement? So instead of saying, folks on your team were offended,
Right.
what you said was sexist. Instead, it's, can you consider the possibility? And I'm going to tell you, every single time that I have used that strategy, folks have said, well, yeah, I guess so. I mean, who's going to say, no, I can't consider it?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
folks will say, well, yeah, I consider it. I can consider that. Okay, well then, what would it mean to you if that were the case? Because they're actually telling us that it did offend them. And I'm assuming that wasn't your intent. I'm assuming you had good intent going into the interaction. So that's another way to just think about it as moving it developmentally, because again, we're dealing with a different kind of situation here. We're not dealing with someone broke a policy, someone broke a law, someone created liabilities for us that merits an investigation. We're talking about that level of incivility that just feels really icky. How do we move that to something that isn't so icky?
Oh.
I do want to mention 2 typical pitfalls that folks fall into when responding to folks in that stage. And one is that they just give them all kinds of information.
Yes. Here, let's send them to training.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So actually, that gender can do this, that, and the other. Or actually, this, that. And what we know, actually, because this is something developmental, it's not a lack of information, it's just different information. And it's the information, what they're telling, what they're saying, and what their actions are, reflect what's in their unconscious and their unconscious beliefs. So if they've got a stack of unconscious beliefs, think of like a huge file cabinet, the old filing cabinets full of beliefs that support what they just said. And you just, add in information from the other. What are they going to do? They're just going to pull more information from their file cabinet, and they're going to dig their heels in more. We see that over and over and over again. We saw it a lot right after George Floyd's murder in 2020, when organizations and folks in the organization were, in uproar. Our organization is racist. Our leaders are racist, our leaders or organization isn't equitable, or whatever it might be. What did leaders do? They sent back information. No, we've done this, and this. No, we did this, that, and the other. And we're going to do that, and the other. Sending information doesn't help, which also is one of my, I just cringe every time I hear it. I hear it all the time. People will say, well, particularly with political polarization, what do you need to do? If you watch one particular cable news, well, then watch the other. If you watch the other, then watch the one. No, that's just going to get you further entrenched. That is not a solution. That just creates more of a spiral. The other thing that we tend to do, which kind of falls in line, is we defend.
Yes.
And we get stuck in the fight ourselves.
Yes. Oh, everybody, yes.
So, and it's natural, particularly if someone is coming at and saying something about me or my identity group. Tell me my group is bad. I mean, what's a natural reaction? No, your group is bad. And that's also not going to be helpful.
I can think when you put it that way, that's amazing. I see it in so many different lights. Most of us are at stage 3. I have to ask how we get beyond stage 3 and start talking about differences, because it feels very scary to talk about differences.
I want you to imagine those 3 middle stages. Imagine them with a color. Well, actually, the first 4 stages, imagine them with a color. So imagine 1 and 3 are blue and 2 and 4 are orange, let's say. In the blue stages, we aren't talking about differences. In the first one, because we're not seeing them, and in the second one, because we've already shoved them under the rug.
Right. Yeah.
In the orange stages, we are talking about differences. In the second, it is judgmental, good, bad, us, them.
Yeah.
In the fourth stage, it's the full pointillism. And it's not good or bad, it just is. So when we are sitting in that third stage, blue stage, right? We're sitting in that third stage and we hear a little bit of the orange in the next stage. Remember, we've only experienced one orange.
Oh.
So we hear it as the orange of the previous stage. So someone talks about differences and we say, oh, well, I was racist. Well, I was sexist. Well, that you can't say. When in actuality, they're just describing the full pointillism and without judgment.
It's
Yes.
Okay. How do we work up the gumption, or whatever the word is, the bravery to go to the fourth stage? Because people are going to accuse us when we go there. They're going to accuse us of being in the second.
Mm-hmm. Well, here's a strategy that we can use any day. That is, I call it inoculation. So a little dose of something that you don't want to really, let go. Let in and kind of run rampant. So you're kind of foreshadowing and saying, hey, you know what? We're going to be talking about, I don't know, who knows? We're going to be talking about markets that we want to get into as an organization. Mm-hmm. And as such, we're going to be talking about differences and differences based on different demographic groups. And when we're talking about those different demographic groups, it's okay. I'm going to be talking about differences. I'm not going to talk about, and I don't think any of us should be talking about them as good or bad differences, but it's okay just to talk about the differences. So I would invite that in this meeting. So what you're doing is really saying, this is a new way of talking about differences than you've thought about it in the past. It's talking about them with deeper complexity and without judgment. So you might hear me saying things about how different groups see things differently, how we have different perspectives, how our perceptions are different. But let's do that from a place of no judgment. And that's the complexity that this project is going to need.
Yikes. It would be so easy to stray off into stereotypes,
Yes.
Part of our market is women, and women like, nice clothes and makeup, and like you can let the stereotypes run rampant. And I'm doing this with no judgment, holier than thou. I don't know how do you avoid that?
Well, and that's another piece too that you do. And actually, one thing that we can do is in the beginning of the meeting, we know this from research, that this actually makes a difference. Before the meeting, we say, or at the beginning, we say, hey, you know what? we want to make sure that we're not stereotyping or we're really not using our bias as we talk about these differences. And so at the end, along the way, I think, let's encourage each other to kind of check that. But then at the end, we're going to ask these few questions as an evaluation. Did we kind of slide back into stereotypes, into bias? Were we judgmental? Or were we able to really look at these differences from a place of complexity and non-judgment? And then you actually do that evaluation at the end. And what research shows is when we do that, we're a whole lot more effective during the process.
Okay, we've run way over. I have to close this. There would be so much more to talk about. I loved this. Where can someone learn more about the way you think?
Absolutely. Well, one of the easiest is to buy one of my books. The recent one that's just been released is Thinking at the Speed of Bias. And that you can get anywhere you get your books. And the other way is my company is deepSEE Consulting, and that's C with a double E, because it's about being able to observe with this deeper level of complexity. So deepSEE Consulting. Or, of course, I'd love to connect on LinkedIn as well. So Sara Taylor on LinkedIn.
Perfect. All right, I'll add those links in the show notes. Well, thanks, Sara. That was challenging. It challenged me personally because I think I'm quite solidly in stage 3, and it's going to take, like most of us, it's going to take some bravery to move to stage 4. I'll think about that after the fact. At this point, though, we've reached the end of this episode. Thanks for listening out there. We'll catch you next time when I talk with another insightful guest.